This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Phillip Quinones. Is that the right way?
It's okay. It happens.
um, we're going to talk about from the struggle to strength, the power of personal growth and mental health. And we're going to talk about your story. Did you have any links you wanted to share with the audience? Because I didn't see that you had a link.
Yeah, so my personal website for my coaching consulting business is pqcoachingandconsulting.com. So that's about it for right now. So some of them have my courses on there, and then very soon I will be publishing my first book on there as well.
Okay, that's cool. Like if you see on the private chat, if you type that in, I can make that a banner.
Okay, no problem.
Later. But other than that, we're going to talk about your story. But we always ask any guest on the show a couple questions before we get to that.
Okay.
What motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
It's a good question. Well, coming out of undergrad with a degree in psychology, I really didn't know what I was going to do with that degree, and I didn't have any type of advisory from my advisors about what was needed to go to the next level. And technically, you really can't do anything with an undergraduate psychology degree. So after that, I just audited myself and said, what can I do day in and day out that I would enjoy? What can I do day in and day out that if I was not being paid for it, I would still do it? What can be financially lucrative in consideration? And what is my purpose and value? And that in and of itself led me to be a therapist because I've naturally just been a kind of an old soul, very good at discerning a lot of circumstances, pretty good at being empathetic with people and being able to just look at people objectively. And so that led me to be a therapist. And I like having meaningful conversations and impacts with people. So when they come to me, I can be the space in their life to finally be able to be free as a human being, free from judgment, free from their stories, free from their struggles, their fears, things that's happening unconsciously, their life circumstances. It's just a freeing space that I can be for somebody. And the only intent that I really have is to just help walk with them through their journey, and however long that may be, hopefully improve it in that type of way. So that's kind of what I would really look for and say with my purpose of what I do as a therapist.
Now, did you always want to go into therapy? Is that like your primary choice when you went to school? Is that or did you fall into that? You found that became something that you wanted to do?
Yeah, not at all. It was definitely happenstance. So coming out of high school, I got a college degree and my associate's degree. So with that being said, I came to four-year college at a junior level. And so technically, I only had 2 years left if all of the classes that I took in my associates applied. So with that being said, I started out pre-med because unfortunately, being an athlete, I had a lot of injuries and a lot of surgeries. So I spent a majority of my time from late middle school till high school, the end of high school, being in physical therapy. And so obviously being an athlete, being athletic, being physical, I enjoyed learning about the body at that point because I've had so many injuries, I learned about it. So realized very quickly in my biology class that it did not click at all. And so I eventually changed to sports management. And what happened was you had to get a C or better in 3 intro courses to get into the major. Unfortunately, with my last class and my accounting class, I got a 0.04 away from a C. So I ended up with a C minus. So I contacted the person who manages the major for sports management and said, hey, I have a 0.04 points away from a C. Would you still let me into the major? And he was like, no, because if somebody had a 0.05, I would have to let them in too. And I'm sitting there like, yeah, like you would. I'm not about to waste my time paying for this class again. And I've been here pretty much a year by now. So I went to my advisor and I said, hey, with all the classes that I've ever taken, what major is going to get me out of here in a year and a half? And I said it straight like that. And she said, psychology. And I said, let's go with that. Mm-hmm. That's literally how I ended up in the major. And then a year and a half later, I ended up graduating with that. And then now I'm sitting like, what do I do? And so that's when I, again, like I said, I did an audit of myself and said the only useful thing that you can do with a psychology degree is go to graduate school. So it just, a lot of happenstance happened with me getting that major and then me pursuing becoming a therapist. And ever since then, it's been very fulfilling for me.
Yeah, it's interesting the path that you find yourself on when you go into school. You find like what speaks to you, because there's so many like kind of set paths, like narrow lanes, and then you've got to find something like you want to do with your life that's gonna also you want to be able to kind of pay it forward. You want to help people. You want to be like, not just, there's some careers where you go into it, it's all about the money.
Right, absolutely. And that's okay. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with it.
There's different personality types, and we need people like that. It creates a lot of safety. It creates a lot of people work hard for it. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with being money centric and being entrepreneurial centric, liking that corporate structure and knowing where you're going to go and having stock options and having great cars and good houses. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think for myself, day in and day out, that's not the type of person that is at the forefront all the time. It's important to me, but not at the forefront where I'm like, I can do this day in and day out. That's just never been that way. I've naturally been a really good teacher. I've been teaching in my professional life pretty much over a decade now in some type of circumstance, in some type of social work or some type of educational space. So I'm just a natural teacher. And then obviously when the time came for me to say, hey, what is going to be my career choice? Then that's when I started to say, okay, I can also be a therapist. And it's the best of both worlds, because eventually I'll be able to work in my own space, make my own money, have my own businesses, and be able to do both at the same time. So it's just following my purpose, and other people may have different.
What do you feel like there's some misconceptions about mental health? Because some people, one thing I find, and I've been, I'm age 57, a child of the 70s, and it seems like, from my experience, healthcare, like if you have healthcare through work, it's like mental health is not given the same level that other types of health are given. Like if you've got a heart attack, if you got diabetes, they don't say there's a limit of how many times you can go to the doctor. If you're diabetic, you get to go to the doctor, and there's not, 10 visits. Right. And then you're done. Like it seems like it's not valued or not thought of the same as other issues.
I'm really curious to know why do you think that is, and why that is so different from mental health?
I just think that there's the corporate world in which I've been in. I'm a software designer. Okay. And there's a mindset in corporate America that, that it's not really thought of. It's kind of like this thing of you got to suck it up, and it's kind of old. It's, we're in the 21st century, and there's still this very old mindset. Yeah. That's not the same as a heart attack. Right. That's not the same as diabetes. I'm a cancer survivor. Okay. Oh, and cancer physically had to go through chemo and radiation and all kinds of treatments. Nobody ever thought the mental aspect of that. Right. Right. There's a lot of once you go through that kind of trauma, there's a mental aspect of it. And I had a hard time getting help for that. Absolutely. But it was easy to get to the oncologist. It was easy to get to the radiologist, but it wasn't so easy to get the other. Right. So I just don't think they understand. Right. Or they've not done the research, or they don't pay attention to the research. Right. And I think it's up to the public to kind of push. And people like advocates like yourself that are in the industry is like why, what can we do to make it better? Right. No, you're absolutely right. And the word that you use is physical. So I think one of the stigmas around it is, what do I actually do as a therapist? A therapist is a person who processes change, right? With human
behavior and a process of change needing to be made, usually from something negative, because most people don't change things that are positive. That doesn't make sense. So we work with people's ambivalence to process their feelings, thoughts, and their behaviors to change them. Okay. So with that change, unlike a medical problem or issue, it's not tangible. You can't see it. You can't even see the result of it. So if you had physical therapy after breaking your arm, you have surgery, they put a cast, you go to physical therapy, you can see the progress of your strength, and then you're able to use your arm better. So we can see the physical when it comes to medical, but with mental, it's on the inside and it's not tangible. So, but with that being said, the human experience is about feeling. So the way that I make it very simple for people to understand the synonymous terms that people use with emotions and feelings are on the inside, emotions are on the outside. So with that being said, it took a while for people to understand that when there's a sporadic, especially extreme mental health emotions and behaviors being displayed, that's when people said, oh, there's something going on here. And no matter what the physical resource we provide for these people, it's not necessarily making them better. Most notably, the people that really did that were people that are post-war when it comes to PTSD.
Yeah,
so, having extreme insomnia, having panic attacks, going back into that traumatic place, shell shock. It used to be called shell shock. So that was real. So when domestic violence went up, when people had these, when it got addictive to drugs and alcohol, those are physical things you can see. So it took people that said, well, we have these extreme behaviors with people. What's going on the inside? And so very, very smart, objective people, most notably starting with Freud, obviously, took time to understand where these things come from. So that's why it's so hard, and the stigma around it is a very hard thing for people to think is real, because I can't sell it to you because it's not tangible.
Yeah, it's hard,
It's very hard to get people to understand that, but it is vital because human beings are nothing but vessels of feelings. Everything you do is with a feeling, whether it's conscious, you think it's conscious, or it's mostly unconscious. So when you're feeling negative about those experiences, there are people that have objectively measured how to go about improving those. There's also the other stigma is you're not healed. There is no cure. Therapists help you with improvements. So even if you took from a physical aspect and you were better after you broke your arm after physical therapy, maybe throughout your life, unless you really made it a strong priority, it'll never be the same like it was before it was broken.
Yeah.
The body has already gone through trauma, the neurological connections, all of those will never be the same. It may look the same if you strengthen it up, but from a cellular level, it's never going to be the same. So what people don't understand is I don't like the market of healing or curing. There are improvements. If you are born with certain mental aspects, or you have gone through your life traumatically from childhood all the way to adulthood, that is years of negative things that have been built up. I come in and say, oh, you want to change something? This is a tool, or we can work on making improvements. I can't go back and magically make those things not happen. And even if I did, there's no guarantee that you still won't end up in the same place. So you need to understand that mental health is for improvement. It is a tool. It is not a cure, and you are not going to be totally healed from anything.
Yeah. So
that's also a stigma behind it.
Well, I think there's no quick fix. And it's like, like I'm a diabetic, and it's just progressively as I get older, it gets worse.
Right.
You have to find out new ways, and it's never really going away. It's always there. And the same thing with the kind of post-traumatic stress of cancer.
Yeah, even that. Or
Yeah.
people who have diabetes, like you have to give yourself a shot for the rest of your life. So we can't cure diabetes as far as I know, but you have to give yourself a shot every single day. So that's a physical thing you have to do. So if you're going through mental health and you're getting depressed or anxious, which are the most common type of things, you have to recognize, okay, I'm getting that way. I'm going through this. I've been given a tool to manage that. And depending on that, it doesn't get me lower than I need to. It keeps me where I need to, or it improves me a little bit better. But if that is a lifelong struggle, you may have that. So it is just to keep you at bay and to improve what you already have, because it's not going to, again, be cured or go away.
Right. I think the problem with a lot of people, they want a quick fix. They want the instant gratification.
Yeah.
They want a pill. In
Yeah.
the pharmaceutical industry, they try to create all these medications. But what I've seen over time is like, if, I'm an artist.
Okay.
And, I do a lot of music. I do music production. I do other things, right?
Okay.
And I hang around a lot of creative people. And creative people usually have trauma. And they're able to process that trauma into art. And that's why people sometimes use art therapy, but because art allows people to take what's inside and kind of get it out and kind of go through it. It doesn't always solve it, but it helps you like process it. And so there's some people that just don't know how to process their trauma.
Yeah.
And it's like, it never goes away. It's like, as an artist, like if you had something really traumatic and that you turn it into a painting, well, it's reflected in that moment, but it never really went away. You kind of manage it. Like you have to manage it until you're not here, right? You have to figure out and people don't want to deal with things that are uncomfortable. They're scared. There's a lot of fear. People want safety.
Right.
They want security. And so when you deal with that, and I wonder, like, what type of patients do you deal with? Do you deal with people like in younger people, older people? It doesn't matter what age, or what's your primary, like, your client base?
Well, to respond to your statements of trauma, I think one of the things that I really want people to understand is speaking to yourself really does matter. And saying that you have something is very different than saying that I'm experiencing something. And so you're saying that I have trauma. So one of my pet peeves is obviously, and it's great, but obviously there's a negative side to it, is people labeling that somebody has depression and anxiety and trauma. With that being said, there are levels to all of those things, mild, moderate to severe. But with that being said, there's a difference between somebody saying that I have trauma, and there's a difference between somebody saying I am triggered or I am apprehensive to something that has really hurt me, and I have unaddressed that. And that's how the language I speak with my clients, because I'm not going to let you victimize yourself, because that doesn't help you change. Mm-hmm. So even if somebody says I have anxiety or I have depression, I get anxious. You don't have anxiety for everything. I get anxious. Okay, where, with who, when?
How? Like, what does it?
I have depression. I'm depressed. Okay, about what? Because you're not depressed if I cut you $1 million check. Most people will be probably really euphoric about that. So maybe you're depressed about grief or the weather, or something happening in your romantic life, or just an adjustment in your life that makes you depressed in this area. So having to isolate what you say is
pinpoint it. Try to pinpoint it, right? Like you need to kind of pinpoint. If you just say, "I have depression," like you said, like what do you have depression about?
Right. It's a feeling. So one thing I don't do is try to help. I help clients say, "No, that is a feeling. That is not a thing. It's a feeling. Anxiousness is a feeling. Depression is a feeling. Trauma is a feeling,
Mhm.
and there's something that triggers that, because it doesn't trigger everything. It doesn't, not everything makes you feel like that.
Mhm.
So it's very important to let people know that. So going with your question, most of the people that I help and that I'm better at helping are adults, because I would say that I'm very high conscientiousness and I'm very low in neuroticism. And so again, having that ability to ask those questions and look at people objectively, I am better doing that through conversations. So people that are able to have those higher level conversations are usually adults. So, and then I enjoy couples counseling as well, because imagine dealing with one adult, and now it's just a lot more fun to deal with two people, because two, actually it's three people, because it's an entire relationship and then two individuals within that. So that's a lot of fun to me as well. And I do that through whatever form really helps them learn, which is a question that in education we really don't ask, because some people learn kinesthetically, auditory, and then some people learn better visually. So I really kind of tailor that to my clients. But the average things that I see most of the time, again, are traumas, and actual diagnosed trauma, depression and anxiety, which any common therapist usually deals with those things.
Do you run into a lot of people who have, the imposter syndrome,
Mm,
or they've dealt with, people who have been, they've childhood trauma, right? They caused this kind of imposter syndrome where somebody, like an adult, psychological or physical abuse
yeah,
made them feel like they're not good enough. It's like, you're never going to be good enough. You're not pretty. You're not going to, you're not going to matter to mean anything. And if these things hit a young mind, and then they get stuck, on a loop. You get these
yeah,
bad loops inside your
yeah.
head, of,
Well,
that just stays in there. And how do you help people get out of that?
I if you do or do not know, whoever is listening and yourself, is there are different orientations that therapists use. And so when somebody's going to therapy, whether it be my friend or somebody who's contemplating going to therapy, I would recommend them asking their therapist what type of orientations they use. And so because it's a female dominated profession, obviously around 90%, and then they're males, and then obviously minority males and Hispanic males is the smallest out of the entire group. So, with that being said, most women, if you want to stereotypically say what their great value is able to process human emotions and be more in tune and aware of that. I would give them that. With that being said, that is not always helpful as the orientation for what the client wants to change. So that comes with a lot of validation, that comes with a lot of reflections, that comes with a lot of nurturing and caring and being empathetic. Awesome. And clients need that, people need that, but that's not always the catalyst to change. So with my orientations, mine with a combined with my personality, it's a kind approach, but a very straightforward to the point. And so with questions that clients have when it comes to maybe imposter syndrome, I ask the question of, where did this come from? What are your thoughts around this? But then if I were to ask a really good question about that, I would say, whoever told you that you have to feel good about yourself? Like that. So and I wish I could show it right now. We have a feelings wheel, which is a really good tool in the arsenal of a therapist. I think there's six or seven, right? It depends on the wheel, but 6 or 7. 5 of the fundamental core feelings that a human being has, and I don't know them off of the top of my head. I do, but I don't. I don't want to say it and say something wrong. But 5 of those 7, or 4 of those 6, depending, are negative. Literally negative, all of them. And then the circle expands out to having more precise feelings that you may have. But 5 of those 7 and 4 of those 6 are negative. So imagine having a battle with yourself and you're like, I'm supposed to go 4 against 2. You're supposed to feel happy. You know how hard it is to consistently feel joy. Joy is one of those, and happiness, and try to push yourself in many different facets of your life to keep chasing after that feeling. That to me doesn't make sense at all. So you may have like this euphoric idea of like my relationship is supposed to be happy. My friendship's supposed to make me be joyful all the time. Like, why don't I feel good when I got that bonus? Or why do I have this higher education and I feel bad about it? But like, I'm supposed to be so happy that I graduated. Maybe you aren't. That's okay. Like, maybe you don't need to feel what you are naturally feeling. So you need to be able to be content with knowing that what comes along with the choices you have made that have made you feel like you are not good enough, you are fighting a feeling because you think that you're supposed to be opposite of that. No, we need to acknowledge that that is how you feel and that it is okay to feel like that. And again, what can we improve to not feel like that? And I'm not going to tell a client, oh, you're supposed to, the goal, if we have 8-week session, 8-week treatment plan, that by the 8th week, you're supposed to feel joy and not feel that way. No, you may, because you want to keep climbing, you want to keep going, you want to keep being better. That's okay. And in this area of your life, you need to be content with that. And we can manage that when you have this negative experience. What is the thought behind that? How do I catch myself? And how do I keep going forward? But if I keep trying to push down somebody's throat that they're supposed to feel different than what they feel, that is unproductive for their experience, and that's unproductive for what they're coming to me for. So I have a very controversial opinion about this idea of having a positive self-worth. You should have self-worth, but we're not going to label it positive or negative. It's just self-worth. And if you don't like the behavior that you're giving to yourself when it comes to your self-worth, then maybe we need to change the behavior. But I'm not going to sit there and try to convince a client to change how they feel.
Yeah. Well, the idea here, you run into a lot of people have like the growth mindset versus like this kind of like more pessimistic point of view. But the thing is like in life, you have to deal, like a lot of people in my industry, music, people want to get into a perfection trap.
Yeah.
They want things to be perfect.
Yeah.
And I've always argued as a producer that it's the happy accidents. It's actually the mistakes in art that make the art beautiful.
Absolutely.
So if people spend all the time trying to edit things out, they end up like destroying the piece.
Yeah.
Like when you're an artist, if you spend too much time reworking it, then you lose what their original intention was. What the original intention might have been painful. It might have been vulnerable.
Right.
And then you spend all your time trying to wipe that out because you get scared of it.
Yeah.
And if you kind of live in the moment, you're willing to kind of deal with like the kind of, the flow state instead of having everything detailed and planned out.
I think that's what.
Yeah, it's hard to do. It's a balance because, the world tries to tell you have to have all these plans. But what do you do when things don't go according to plan?
Yeah, and I think that has to do with culture. People, that's something that I learn about and take time to learn about a human being is their cultures. We all have different cultures. You have a music culture. I have a therapy culture. There's sneaker culture. There's cartoon cultures. There's theatrical cultures. There's cultures in the Ivy Leagues of sports. There's a lot of cultures. People think culture is heritage. It's not the same thing. So cultures are those little associations. In America, on the Western side, are very different than people that are on the Eastern side. Most of those people have more of a collectivistic mindset and collectivistic culture overall, which ties into also heritage of those type of things. With that being said, in an individualistic culture, it is an extreme impractical way of trying to have a human experience because it says that your feelings, your life, your choices, your value is only solely based on you. And that's literally a thing I have to ask people, because which is very hard, because when you're trying to produce something, it's saying, what do I want, instead of what do other people need. So you respect a lot of artists because whether it's Picasso or Michelangelo, or whether it be Michael Jackson or Prince, or newer people, whether it be Lil Wayne or whoever the case may be, or Janet, or whoever you want to talk about, being able to get in that studio and have people around you that you have shared your vulnerability with keeps you on track for what the message is you want to get through your music. And so maybe that may be, hey, I just want to come in here and I just want to say whatever comes to mind once that beat drops. And I want it to be where my voice, and you can hear pain through that, not necessarily tune it up to where it's something that needs to be perfected so much, because I am this human being that is going through this feeling. I have my own individual story. Nobody was, is, and will ever be me. So whatever I express that with, let me be naked about that. Let me be vulnerable about that. And yes, you need to tune it up for people's engagement, but don't necessarily lose that in any artistic way, whether that be painting or music or a conversationalist. I think, I definitely see myself as an artist as well in the art of conversations. And what does that look? That's why I'm unapologetically myself to my clients. And some days I'm like, look, it's not me right now, and I'm trying my best. Some days I let clients know, hey, look, if you're not going to be serious today, we got to end this, because I just can't today. I'm unapologetic. I curse. Like, I'm unapologetically myself when it comes to my clients, and people appreciate that because I am a person. They don't come to see, this is actually a really good example. They don't come, every therapist learns the same shit. So they don't know anything on average about what I am doing. So they come to see me. They're coming to talk to Phillip. So when you talk to Phillip is not going to magically put on a new different hat to be a different person. If not, go see Sarah or go see John.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be me. So that's why my clients enjoy me. And my clients often say, Phil, and this is a quote from this week, I have a love-hate relationship with you. I'm like, that's great. Okay. That's amazing. It means that we're good. We've been rocking it for a while, but I'm going to get up in there when I know that you're not giving the best that you can, or you know that you're not giving the best you can. So it is kind of that way to just let yourself be.
I think, yeah, it's very interesting about the Eastern mindset. I lived in Japan for 2 years.
Okay.
And it's a different, like the collective versus the individual, and the society. It's a different mindset. Because one time I was walking through Shibuya in Tokyo, and the sidewalk, everybody kind of walks the same direction. And you see all these like Westerners, they're bucking that. Like they're going, like the Japanese are all going a certain way. They're all going north. And you see a Westerner's going south.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's a great observation. Yeah.
And you see, like they've made a decision that on that street, that's the way everybody's going.
Absolutely. No.
Yeah, and it's funny when you look at it, and I lived there, and I kind of learned, it's like, yeah, you could pick off like, oh, these guys just came in and they don't get it. They haven't actually, they don't have situational awareness.
Yeah.
The Westerners would want to demand like things be, you're in Japan, but you want it to be your way. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you're not in New York.
Yeah, you're not gonna get it that way. It's different. It's gonna hit you hard. You can, and that's why I'm glad you had a kind of a sociology observation of that behavior. And even in conversations with me, you can, if I literally did a template or a voice transcript of the sessions, you can, I literally go through all of the things that somebody is saying, and you hear a lot of I, and me. and my own, and you can have different synonyms of making it about me, but in other cultures, it's we do this, we practice this, we don't do this, we traditionally do that. So it's just a different type of, even in a language sense, how different the rest of the world is from more individualistic cultures here on the West Side.
And then it's like the consequences of actions.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're in a society that understands that if you do something that affects another person, but sometimes like in our culture, people do something they have no concept as like what you just did, right? Because they seem to be like the individual was like standing alone, and they don't understand like it's a ripple effect.
Yeah.
And in other Eastern societies, is more of an understanding that your actions have consequences,
Yeah.
and that you don't just have the freedom to just kind of adversely affect the collective,
Right.
just because you
Absolutely.
feel like doing it. And we seem to have this thing with like, well, I can go and just like my wife like is a cancer patient.
Yeah.
And I've had cancer, so I have empathy because we've gone through the same thing. And there are nurses that don't want to wear an N95,
Mm.
and her immune system is reduced, and she had to get a letter to
Mm.
tell us like I need, like I'm in like a very weakened state, and I need people around me when I'm going into my therapy to wear the mask.
Right.
And people were more concerned about their individual right to not wear the mask
Right.
than to wear the mask. Like in Tokyo, that wasn't an issue.
Right.
Just like what? Yeah, like aren't you supposed to do no harm?
Right. And I think that that ties in to discovering in my work and people's work values. People, in an individualistic way, value things differently. And what doesn't work out for people is they think that just because I have this value and on my hierarchy of the things that I value, the person I'm going to meet is the same. That's not true in an individualistic culture. You, me, John, Sarah, Brittany, Brianna, Jeffrey, Bob, Joe, every single person in an individualistic culture is different when it comes to their values. And then one of the things that is a very heartbreaking thing to know is that if you don't feel the same, something is wrong with you. Whether that be politically, whether that be based on religions, whether that be based on different cultures, like you don't feel the same way I do, you don't value the same way that I do, that makes you a bad person or a negative person. And yes, that creates problems in the macro because when you get people that have a lot of people that have the same values on both sides of an argument, then you have trouble deciding which way to go. So do we mandate mask or do we not mandate mask? Do I have freedom of speech here to say what I want to say, or do I have to abide by new laws that come in and say what they control what I say and what I don't? Those are just constant battles between a macro level and an individual level with people in an individualistic culture, and it's a hard way to navigate. It's a hard way to navigate.
It is hard to have like the idea of like self-care and mindfulness in a society where everybody's kind of going in their own trajectories.
Uh-huh.
You're just like, well, I'm trying to take care of myself, but then I'm running into, you know, resistance, or I'm running into like people who aren't mindful, you
Yeah.
know, of what happens or what they do. And it just seems to me that we're not taught empathy.
Yeah.
But they like empathy is okay. I can understand the other person, and I can actually understand their point of view, and I don't have to actually be a part of that, but
Right.
I can be understanding of it.
Right.
But it's like this idea, like you don't have to be understanding of it, right?
Yeah. If you don't want to.
That's the negative aspects of that. They seem compounding in the things that we see in society today,
Mhm.
where people can just say, well, I don't feel that I should respect
Yeah.
somebody's history.
I'm not responsible. I'm not. I don't need to be punished for anything. I don't need to be held accountable
Yeah.
for anything. And the reason why that, one of the reasons why that is because accountability is a big thing, especially in an individualistic culture, because I can go for most of my life outside of maybe childhood where I don't have to be accountable for anything because I can always justify why I'm not in the wrong because my feelings are the things that validate that instead of the objectiveness about what the situation entailed. And so I don't, if let's say for example it comes to dating and relationships, if I'm dating somebody, I have no obligation to be communicative with them, and I never have to change because I can just go find somebody else.
Yeah.
So I can go my whole life being a new character, never addressing myself, never saying that I'm the problem, never saying that I need to improve, because I can always leave a situation. And because my feelings are valid for leaving that situation, I never have to think that I need to change.
No responsibility.
So then you have to sit there and go, look, I'm not going to, there are certain people that have that emotional awareness of them and say, hey, look, I've actually had to sit down and say, I don't like people that treat me that way or feel like I'm that expendable that they don't have to be accountable for anything. So now I don't put myself around those people. So finding those people with empathy and accountability and having consideration for another person is why it's so rare in our behavior. Again, more on an individualistic perspective. Because most people are empathetic. Like this, it's not about that. It's a fact of it's not to the level at what the macro is. So, people are generally not bad people. I'm not saying that they're good people, but generally not bad people. But also, they're not. Empathy is something that is taught. It's not something that's necessary. I think it's innate for some people, but it does need to be a priority as we speak, but that's why it's such a valuable thing to find in people.
Yeah, I was a sociology major, and we kind of studied the crowd behavior over like a riot in the permission structure of somebody that, throws the first rock, throws the first brick through a window, and then what happens with the dynamic of suddenly you have rules and laws, but then suddenly somebody breaks the law, then that gives you the permission to break the law, and then 10 people break the law, 20 people break the law, 30 people break the law.
Yeah.
And if you asked them before they went there, were they going to break the law? No.
Right. And that's very valid. Yeah.
So you get these permission structures that, you have this, and then now you have the internet.
Yeah.
And it's like, what's the behavior of a riot, a virtual riot?
And now the algorithms, and they will always be, they're getting, the way that they do is they're so, I don't know what it is within what it is, but they get to tailor your experience with their media to you, whether you say it, whether you like it, whether you comment it. So now it's like, oh, I'm not the only person that feels this way. I'm not you don't ever see the other side. Let's just put it.
Yeah, you get what the system thinks
right,
you want.
what you might hear, what you want to see. But that's what I like about my profession and being a social science is the objectiveness in my work makes the individual not subjective anymore. And so, yes, I like that. I like that observation in sociology, and then like also punishment as well. So when there's that famous study where people were pressing a button and they were faking somebody showing pain, but the authority figure made them feel as though it was okay to keep causing pain, which was something, a study that I think that happened after a war, because I think people really studied Nazis.
Yeah,
So
Nazi behavior.
Right. So then, and then also when it comes to hierarchies of people. So I think I forgot her name. She's I don't know. I don't see her often. So maybe she passed away or maybe she didn't. The white lady that made it her mission for white people to understand, it mostly is white people to understand their privilege, because she did experiments socially with brown-eyed people and blue-eyed people. And she made the brown-eyed people feel really bad or do authority figures on the people that have blue eyes. And then she objectively had to measure what was that experience like. So you don't like it when it's done to you, but now you know what the experience is like for a minority person when there's a hierarchy of people making you feel bad. So I forgot her name, but that white lady really did her damn thing in her career.
It's interesting, like the behavior of people, because like if you go and say, it's interesting. There's some like studies or just situations, like if somebody feels like you get this situation, like we're going to take benefits from group X, right? But you're going to keep group Y is going to keep your benefits, right? And then suddenly we switch. It's like you're going to lose your benefit,
right?
And I said, well, I thought I was going to keep mine, right? And it's like I thought only group X was going to lose it.
Yeah.
Then suddenly they're upset about the structure, but they're okay with the power structure as long as they get to keep their benefit.
Absolutely.
You know? So you see these group dynamics, and then it shows it's like, okay, well then you didn't have empathy for group X,
right?
You know, this idea. Look at like what happened in Rwanda. You know, he's like people were on the phone on the radio talking about cockroaches.
Yeah,
like, dehumanizing people and saying, let's smash the cockroaches, destroy the cockroaches. So when you get people that dehumanize and use language, and then you get some people say, well, language doesn't matter. But the whole Rwanda incident shows that the radio was used and language does matter. If you use language over the public airways, you can trigger kind of Nazi level events.
We are, like I mentioned before, we are nothing but feelings. If you can get somebody to acknowledge how you feel about something, whether it be the darkest parts of us, because every single person has or wants or desires to have that level of power and influence on another person. It just takes a consciousness to say, I don't do that. So, like, even in a religious sense, people think virtues are just being good. No, that's not what virtues are. Virtues are the ability to choose to do bad when there's opportunities to present itself, but you choose not to. So you can't just have good. You have to have good and bad, but choose good. That's what makes it virtuous. So with that being said, when you are in direness or in survival mode, or again, whether it be Germany after World War I with the Treaty of Versailles, and a person rises up and says, hey, look, we're going to go from being responsible for this war to being a top 3 nation in less than 7 years, and be that but I don't fault people with that. Now, that is not bad, but I don't fault that because they do have a right to pursue being better for themselves. So objectively, most people may not know. That's why it's important for people that maybe have that privilege, like you said, to be aware of that, because I can't fault you for the level of awareness that you don't have.
Yeah, that's the problem.
So I may know it because I've educated myself, or I've been the recipient of that negativity. So I know what that obviously feels like. But as somebody who's on the other side, objectively, you may not know. So that's why sometimes I don't fault people who maybe still have that perspective. They sometimes do. Most of them do. But I don't think, again, I'm going to project how I individually feel because they are looking through the world differently. So that's a hard, but even when it comes to clients, like I try to take the person to almost how to turn a mirror and have them look at themselves. And sometimes that means looking at yourself objectively. So sometimes I remember having a client and she was going through something distressful, and her father called, and then literally at the same moment, not because he knew something was happening negatively with her, but he said, "Hold on, I'm getting another call." And then he called back a couple seconds later, literally a couple of 30 seconds to a minute later, and called her back. And then she hung up on him. And then she was mad. She was explaining to me, how the fuck can he leave me? Like, doesn't he know? Like, I needed him. But I was like, he didn't know. He didn't know like what you were going through, but you fault him as if he was supposed to randomly know that you were going through that. So I'll validate how you feel, but objectively, he didn't know that you needed him to the level of that extent. You can't fault him for that level of awareness. And then eventually, she was like, "You're kind of right, Phillip." And that's how I have to get clients to look at situations, and that may fall back on that core defensiveness about what you may believe about yourself or what you think may happen. It's valid, but it's not always useful.
Well, I think that goes to the idea like listening skills,
Mm-hmm.
but the listening skill of not just listening to like to other people, but to yourself.
Right.
Like if you record yourself, right, or you listen to what is it that you're saying, right,
Mm-hmm.
and if you actually have somebody listen to the words they use,
Yeah.
like you said, like somebody might be saying "I" all the time instead of "we" or
Yeah.
"are," right, or they're always blaming.
You
Like
or
the
somebody,
other
yeah.
person, always the other person. They never take any responsibility, or maybe they're somebody that's a people pleaser, but they
Okay.
really and they think they're great because they are, but then there's a lot of resentment, and then they blow up, and
Yeah.
if they don't realize, well, that's actually maybe not the best way to be because you're not really doing it for the right reason.
Yeah.
Because
Well, I think you are doing it for the right reasons. It's just at the expense of yourself.
yeah,
And so if you're that type of person, usually that's the type of personality type. Especially, I think it's more of an avoidant type of personality type. That means that you have to have better boundaries. You need to know that what I can give, I'm willing to give, even if it's not reciprocated, if I'm giving with that heart. So, like, for example, I live in Atlanta, Georgia. There's a lot of homelessness. And obviously, when I have the opportunity, whether it be a snack or water or something or change or whatever, I know that I'm not supposed to expect that back from them. I'm giving it without that. So that's an okay level for me to give. So if I'm the type of person that is giving, 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 and that's what holding people accountable, even in clients, saying that you chose that. There is choice orientation or a choice theory that acceptance, it's like an acceptance and commitment therapy, where like you chose to give. Now you're upset because it wasn't the response that you wanted, but you chose to give it. And then if you chose again, that's something that you have to be accountable for. So I'm not gonna let you victimize. So like, how can they respond to me like that? And how can they do that to me? You gave it. So I have to make you accountable for that. Because if I don't hold you accountable, you're not gonna change. So with that being said, like you said, listening to understand somebody as well, actively listening. Carl Rogers, which is a person-centered therapist who developed that theory, the power to listen to somebody is an underrated skill in life. And listening is not just words. Listening is making the experience of the best way that we can vocalize what's happening on the inside, because the emotions may not always match up with what's happening with your feelings. That is why listening and validation and reflecting and acknowledging somebody can change somebody, can make them not end their life, to make them have a beautiful relationship, to improve whatever. And so many people do that. Good teachers do that. Good parents do that. Good friends do that. A good romantic partner does that. If you have even a person to listen to you, it can change lives. And it has. Words are very powerful. The tongue is so powerful and strong. It has destroyed nations. It has built nations. It has built people up. It has destroyed people. It is such an underrated experience for a human being, is listening and speaking.
I think also you have to understand sometimes when you listen, it's also like what's not said or the actual non-verbal
Yeah.
communication that's happening. Because as a musician, a lot of times there's a lot of stuff in a song where there's a space between the notes,
Okay.
there's the silences,
Okay.
right? Those things as an artist, you start to realize like you don't just fill up the space
Okay.
to just fill up the space.
Okay.
Sometimes like if you actually like listen to the silence or you listen to like the meaning behind the words or the
Mm.
unsaid thing that's said, and that's like really listening. Like if you true listening is to actually pick up the whole the everything that's coming out, right? To all the inputs,
That's a
right?
nice.
Not just the words. There's
I,
more than just the words, and that's hard. That's hard to do because some people just get the words and they don't actually get the other things.
Absolutely. I think that's a good metaphor that I'll take with me when I do so many, obviously, different perspectives and metaphors and analysis in different facets of people's lives for them to understand. I think that'd be a good thing to take back to my clients like, hey, this is what a musician does. And I think what it also creates is an opportunity for people to be silent, like to really sit with yourself, to be physically silent and to listen to what you are saying. A lot of people don't do that because again, they're afraid to go to that space because one, maybe they never knew or never knew how. Maybe nobody's ever taken an opportunity to do, but maybe that metaphor about that space of take time to figure out what that is. It doesn't always have to be filled. Um, but that's what's great about processing your feelings and your behaviors and your thoughts because you don't realize what you may actually be doing because you're just doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like you literally are just going, and that's what I said. That's why I can't fault people sometimes. They literally are just going about life. There's not a pause, there's not a worry, there's not a care, there's not a thing I need to change, it's not a problem. Cool. So when you do have that, the ability to do that, it can be very rewarding. But again, I don't push people to change if they don't want to. I don't talk if you don't need me to talk. And if you just need me to listen, I'll just listen. But I always want you to do that for yourself.
Yeah, I think that just picking up like the situational awareness of your own soul, right? It is that's a hard thing. 'Cause some people, the Victorian poets had this term like the looking glass self.
Okay.
So they would go and you read Wordsworth and Blake and all the all those poets.
Okay.
They would dive into like what is in that mirror.
Okay.
And it's that soul reflecting back to yourself. And that's where you get into the deep challenge, right? Of
Mm,
are you actually gonna be honest with yourself?
mm,
Or are you gonna tell yourself a lie?
mm.
So how are you gonna work with anybody else if all you do is tell yourself lies? Then what are you telling to other people?
You know, but I also think it's true. That is a good perspective, a good artistic perspective to have. And I don't, I like poetry, but I couldn't recite anything for you. But I probably maybe could dive into that to see what I can pull from that. But I also think the thing I recommend people do is audit yourself. We do a lot of auditing with my type of work, and auditing goes from psychosocial history to what is school, what was that experience like, to socialization, to what's happening now, your romantic life. Physically, we don't look at that too. It's like what's happening with you physically, what are you eating, what are you drinking. All of those things matter, and I'm saying that audit because sometimes, again, in one area of your life you may not need change, you may be great, but in another area of your life you need or want to change something. So you don't have to audit and change everything, but validate that that feeling is real also that it's your truth, but it doesn't have to be the most useful thing for you in this moment. And obviously it's not, because if you end up with me, there is something unconsciously that you want to change because I didn't call you.
Yeah.
So I didn't call you. So you want to change something. And again, depending on where you are on the change scale, that's very important too. You may be ready, you may not. So you may want to lie to yourself and keep lying to me. But as again, the type of therapist I am, at some point, if our relationship is strong, I'm gonna call bullshit where I see bullshit. I'm like, you can lie to me all you want. Like, I'm fine with it. It's your life. But if you're gonna waste my time and your time and you want to keep paying me, that's okay. Like, it's fine. Like, I can count on your bill to pay my bills. But if you really want to make a change for yourself, we have to be honest here. But you have to create that space for people to be there, because again, they may not have ever had that in their life before. Like, no judgment. I don't care where you're from, how it is, what you believe, what's your sexual orientation, what you worship, what your SCS is, what your education is, your shoe size, your skin color. I don't really care. I care about the objectiveness about what you actually value and what you want to change. So it's not a lie. It's not the truth. It's not good. It's not bad. It is what it is.
Well, I think that's an interesting place to be, because you're dealing with, like, the real, truth. And truth is whatever people want it to be, but
Yeah.
it is the reality that you're in. It is, like you said, what it is. Like my dad used to say, it is what it is.
Mhm.
But we always end up talking, taking up the time, and it goes by quicker than we ever imagined. And we actually hit our hour mark, but we
Yeah.
didn't talk about your link. We did talk about it briefly, but pqcoachingandconsulting.com, that'll be fully clickable. So if people click on that, that's how they can connect with you and contact you?
Gotcha. Yeah, absolutely. And then my personal Instagram is I am that boy Phil. So that's my personal Instagram. So again, the reason I do the personal one too is because it's also a part of my life being a human being. So I really don't, even though I have both of those things and they both entail different things, like, it's who I am. So those things are people can contact me from. So I really enjoyed being on today. I think we had a great, meaningful conversation.
I want to thank you for being on the show. We were just live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. The link I mentioned below would be fully clickable. And if you're on Instagram, we're going to tag you with a story. We do clips of the podcast.
Mhm.
Those clips will be on TikTok. They'll be on Instagram. They'll be
Okay.
on Facebook Reels. And that will give people like an insight, brief clip of what we talked about. And then they'll be able to go to a landing page and listen or watch on any of the podcast platforms. We're going to be on all the podcast platforms that you listen to, like Apple or Spotify or Amazon, iHeartRadio, places like that. By the end of the day today, I want to thank you for being a guest on the Family Electric Ghost podcast. Have a great rest of your Sunday.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.